Hi, I'm Sean Thompson. I'm part of the technical services team here at Crown House. I'm the Saddling technical expert. We're here today to show you us using Saddling Classic on a garden bench, which is what I'm sitting on. We're going to explain how we found the bench, what we've done to prep it, and how we've taken it forward, and we'll show you the finished results. The product that we're going to show you is Saddling Classic. This is the product here. Now, Saddling Classic is an ideal product. It's a low build solvent based system, 2 or 3 coats depending on what depth of colour that you want to use. And this particular product is excellent on anything to do with like garden architecture, decking, fencing, anything that's outside in the garden. You use this product on its own. The colours that we're going to be using today are these 3. We've got mangrove, smoky olive and saucy green. Obviously, if you were doing your bench, you'd probably just pick one of these colours, but because we're trying to show you the range of colours that you can get in Classic, which is over 60, we're going to put 3 on this particular one. Okay. This is how we actually found the bench in the first place. I don't know if you can notice, but it's actually underneath the tree. In a perfect ideal world, what you want to do with all your garden architecture is that when you first purchase it or when you're actually building it, if you can decorate it prior to fixing together, that's the best thing to do. But if you do find that 12 months down the line you're looking at your garden furniture, a bench, a pergola, whatever that may be, and it's looking a little bit worse for wear, don't panic, you can get this back. This is the whole point of this video. So this is one of the seat boards, and the piece of wood that I've got here next to it, the bit that's grey, is basically the colour that it was in the first place. The added thing that we had on this was a load of algae, because being under a tree you'll get a lot of organic growth, mould, algae, that sort of thing. So what we've done is that we've actually power sanded this first. Now, I appreciate not everybody has a power sander, but if you do and it have got grade wood, and I'll explain that in just a moment, if you can power sand it, it just makes your life a lot easier. You can do it by hand, but it just involves a lot of work. Grade denatured timber is basically when untreated timber is exposed to the elements and UV from the sun. After 4 weeks, you may start to notice that it gets like a fuzzy effect, and then after about 9, 12, 15 months, you'll start seeing this grey, silvery look. And basically, it's not rotting, it's not decaying, it's solid still, but basically the surface of the timber has started to get sunburnt. If you paint over the top of that, the coating will adhere to all that fibrous, brittle stuff, and it will flake and break away. It doesn't matter how super duper fantastic the coating is. So it is important that you do your prep. Okay, and in this particular case what we've done is that we've sanded it back and we've got back to clean, bright timber. Now, because we had the added algae and organic growth, we've also treated this with a fungicide, and that's an important thing to note, because what that will do is that will kill off any growth that's there, because it's basically small spores, and it will just prevent that regrowth happening. Try not to use things like bleach. They only do a job to a point, okay? So buy a proper proprietary fungicide and follow the instructions, which is generally you spray it on or apply it and you leave it for a day, and then when it's dry and it's finished, you can just clean it off as per the instructions. Now, this particular board here has obviously been taken back. This is in its bare form, and we've done the front and the back, okay? And then what we've done, as you can see what I'm sitting on, but here's a board that we've actually done, and we've painted this up with 1 single coat of Classic. So this is like the base coat. So after all the prep, we've sanded it, we've used some methylated spirits, which we'll show you in just a moment when we actually show you us applying the product from new. In an ideal world, again, if you can do the undersides of things like your decking boards and your benches, then great. If you can't, don't worry, we're not expecting you to lift it all up and then put it all back down again. But if you do get the opportunity to do so, it just makes sure that you get at least 1 coat on the underside, so that when it's sitting in situ, any moisture, it doesn't absorb from the underside. It just makes everything last a lot better, a lot longer, and it makes it look a little bit nicer as well. So that's where we're going to get you up, and then we'll start doing some decorating in just a moment. Okay, so now we're at a situation now whereby we can start thinking about doing our final preparation and starting to put the first coat on. So we've got our board here that we showed you. It's important now that we just do this final bit of preparation just to make sure that everything's absolutely as good as it can be for the coating to go on. Obviously what we've done is just use the mechanical sanding to get the worst off. So this is our final preparation to make sure there's a key and it is fully clean. Now when you're abrading the surface, you can use pads, scotch pads, whatever you want to use, papers and the like. It's fine as long as you use something that's non-metallic, nothing like wire wool or anything like that. We're going to use a paper here. The important thing is that you use something that's like a P180 or a P240 grade paper. It's important that it's not too fine, but at the same token it's not too rough, and that will give you the best key for the coating to adhere to the surface, and it will also make sure that it's not looking too rough, therefore looking a bit worn and horrible. So what we're going to quickly do is buzz over the surface. It should be quite easy because I've done most of the hard work, so I don't need to do this to within an inch of its life. I'm just basically making sure that the paper's doing its job and it's providing a key. Now, if you want to, you can go into every nook and cranny, but appreciate that can be quite difficult, particularly when we're doing it on this bit here. But we do want to make sure that we are doing the bits and the areas where the coating is going to be worn the most. So in this case, it's actually the surface of the seating area. I will quickly do the back as well. We've got the opportunity here, as because we've got the seat element off the bench, then I can do the back of this as well. So if we're going to do a job, let's do it properly. Okay, make sure you dust it off. It's a good idea to make sure that you use a soft brush or a jammy brush, whatever is appropriate and available to you. You'll be amazed at how much dust and muck is removed. You don't want to be decorating over a load of dust because obviously it's going to leave loads of bits in your paint. So let's get those out of the way, and then the final bit, as far as the cleaning, this is the most important thing, is using your methylated spirit. So this is the purple stuff. We don't recommend the use of white spirit. White spirit basically will just leave a greasy residue on the surface, and in worst case scenarios can actually create a barrier between the actual coating bonding to the surface, whereas methylated spirits, the purple, is basically a sharp solvent, and then it will flash dry off within a matter of seconds. So use a clean lint-free cloth. So I've just got an old t-shirt here. Don't use your old duster because it'll just leave loads of bits all over the place. Be quite generous with the methylated spirits. And what this is doing is that this is actually what we call degreasing the surface. So we'll just wipe over it. It's quite a warm day today, so it will flash dry quite quickly. And if you do find that there's a little bit of dust coming off there, if there is a bit of muck and grime, then just rotate the cloth around before you do the next bit. You don't want to be reintroducing it. Hopefully what you can see on camera is that as I'm doing it, it is drying. So like I said, it should only be a matter of seconds up to a minute. And then just quickly buzz over all those surfaces. Pay particular attention to the top because obviously that's the bit that you're going to be looking at and you're going to be using. There we go, done that. So get that round, put the top back on that. And then that is now in a situation whereby it's going to be drying off. Now, virtually dry. Really, whilst I'm sorting out my paint and getting that ready, that will be ready to go. Try not to do that preparation process a week before, particularly on a hot day. Try and do it just before you're going to be doing the decorating. And then we're on to decorating. So the product that we've got here is classic, as you know, and we've got the colour mangrove that we're going to be doing on this particular bit. So here's our product. Now we're using a broad bladed stirry stick here, and with all products, now this product, as you can see, is quite loose. Okay, but again, as with all products, it's very, very important that you do take the time to stir a product. Just make sure that you get into the edge of the can and then lift it up, just like a cake mixture. We don't want you using things like screwdrivers, chopsticks, spoons or anything like that, please. Basically you just whiz everything around at 1,000 miles an hour and it doesn't lift the products and evenly distribute it through the can. So use the right tool for the job, just makes your life simpler. So once we've got that to a consistency that we're happy with, then let's get the excess off our stirry stick. Let's get that out of the way, and then I can move the item nearer to me to start decorating. And then with classic, okay, it's quite a loose product, so I'll just warn you now, just make sure that you've got areas protected with dust sheets or matting or something like that, because it's quite thin and because it's getting in every nook and cranny. It is important that you do protect everywhere, okay? As we're carrying on down the back here, you'll notice also that the timber itself can be very thirsty on occasion. So the good thing about using a low build system like Classic is that it will satisfy that, but you do need to make sure that you apply enough so that it soaks it up. Ultimately what we're going to end up with is a translucent finish. Now translucent basically means that you've got the colour but you can actually see through the coating and actually see the substrate underneath, unlike an opaque system which is basically a solid colour. So you'll probably notice that I'm actually loading my brush up quite often, and that's because you get a feel for the wood. You don't have to be an expert, but you can get a feel for how much the wood's going to take. So don't be afraid. And also the joy with using a solvent based stuff is that if you do find that you've missed a bit, or you've got like a little bit of a run, or you've got a bit of a mark, say, or something like that, you've got plenty of time. You can just go back over that a few minutes later. That's absolutely fine. That's why this product's particularly easy to use for everybody. You may have also picked up on the brushes that we're using. Now what you generally find with solvent based systems is that natural bristle brushes would be used, but for those of you with a keen eye, you'll notice that I'm using a synthetic brush. I'll be perfectly honest with you, if you're now using quality synthetic brushes, they're good for everything, so that'll be fine. Just don't use natural bristle brushes with water based, but in this particular case a synthetic or a natural bristle one would be fine. Now when we're doing the underside, in a perfect world if you could do 2 coats, great, but as long as you get a coat on, in theory it's never going to get weathered because it's not on top. Also finally you've got end grains as well. Now these bits, the end grains, they are particularly vulnerable to water ingress, so what you want to do is sort of almost load your brush up and just let it take it in. Okay, your end grain is 100 times more absorbent, hence why whenever you've got a bit of wood that starts to rot or anything like that, then that will be the bit that goes first. Okay, and I'll do the top last, and then what I'll do is I'll just quickly buzz over the whole lot afterwards just to make sure it's all tidy and I've got no runs anywhere as well. So that's it, all coated up with the things. Now what I need to do is just quickly just make sure I take the excess off my brush. Now I don't want to do this with a dry brush because I don't want to remove anything, but I do want to lay it off, and this just gets rid of any runs, and it also just gives us an opportunity to check any bits we've missed. There we are. So we'll just make sure that we pop that somewhere to one side that it can just dry off, and we'll just leave that. Now what Classic will do is that 20 degrees, decent breeze outside, you'll normally find that will be touch dry in about an hour or two, but it will need sort of 16 to 24 hours between coats, so basically the next day. As I said earlier, basically 2 coats is the minimum that you need to put on. I did if you put 3 coats on, if you put it on high wear areas, so things like decking and this particular bench because people are sitting on it, and that's what you need to do. Okay, so the first coat's all done, that's all fully dry. So what we're now going to do is we're going to do a little bit of preparation and readiness for the second coat. Now what you'll find is that when you put any coating into bare timber or onto bare timber, you may find that when it's dry it feels slightly rough again. So when you run your hand across it, you think, oh, that's not like as smooth as when I first did it. Now what's happening there is that as the coating absorbs into the wood, the soft part of the wood slightly shrinks back, and the more solid parts of the wood basically stay put, and what you feel is basically what they call nibs. It's like the solid part. So in order to get rid of that, and you only absolutely need to do this on the first coat, you don't need to do it every coat, although if you want to, that's up to you. Okay, and you just get your sandpaper, your P180, and you basically just let the sandpaper slightly take those rough bits off. Now hopefully you can notice there that you'll get a slight scratching on the surface, but I am not removing the coating. It is important that you don't press so hard that you do that. So let the sandpaper do its job. Okay, and then what you'll find is that when you run your hand across it, that feels a lot smoother. Obviously it's important just to make sure that you get rid of any residual dust. You don't need to keep cleaning it, don't get the meths out and things like that unless you're doing this 2 or 3 weeks down the line. Okay, so in theory you should be doing this for the following day. Then we're ready to put our next coat on. Now the reason why we're showing you this, because you're just applying it the same way as you did before, is that you will notice with Classic, because that first coat that goes on absorbs into the wood and it's a translucent coating so you can see through it, okay, your second coat will give you the actual colour that you're probably going to end up with. Now also bear in mind that if you put a translucent coating onto a light wood, it will look different to if you put it onto a dark wood, which is why we always recommend that you do a trial application every time. All right, so if we do this, you'll see that you get a lot more depth of colour now. And again, just make sure that you apply the coating. It's an opportunity, if you've missed some bits, then you can pick them up. Okay, don't put so much on your brush that it's going all over the place, obviously, but at the same token we do want to put a decent amount of coating on there and then basically lay that off with a brush. Now obviously that's wet, but you will get a lot more depth of colour. Then as that dries, then you'll get your final effect, and then you just simply carry on from the top downwards, so that if you do get any drips, then obviously you're picking them up as you go along. And always lay off in the direction of the grain. That makes sure that you get the right finish. And you'll also notice, hopefully, that I'm going from one end of the board to the other. All right, try to avoid doing stop-start marks like that, because I don't know if you can pick that up on camera, but you will see that when it dries through. So just make sure that you do go to the ends of the boards. Okay, so we're getting to a point there that we've got the second coat on with quite a number of the boards. So hopefully what you can start to see now is the colour difference between the 3 colours, and particularly with the second coat of Classic compared to the first coat of Classic. So you just need to bear that in mind, that your first coat to your second coat, you will get more depth of colour. So it's particularly important that when you are picking a colour, just do a trial application. So use our sample pot service, and what you can do is just make sure you do a little brush out yourself and just make sure that you're absolutely happy that the end result is going to look what you want it to look like from not only 1 but 2 coats. So here we are, we've now finished the job using Saddling Classic on this tree bench. We've got the 3 colours, we've got the saucy green, we've got the mangrove, we've got the smoky olive here, so to give us that contrast. So now I'm sitting here enjoying this lovely drink on this beautiful summer's day. And as far as maintenance is concerned, because this is under a tree, you'll get a little bit of tree sap, depending on how often we use the bench and how exposed it is. What you'll need to do is give it an occasional clean. That will just be warm water, mild detergent, and give it a rinse off with some clean water. Eventually what you'll find is that when the coating gets a little bit tired, worn, it will just look a little bit dull after that cleaning regime. So all you need to do is just, again, give it a clean, make sure it's dry, and then apply 1 or 2 coats as appropriate. That's it, nice and easy. For free help and advice, please call the number on the screen and speak to one of our dedicated wood care team. For full details of our saddling range, please visit our website saddling.co.uk or follow us on Facebook and Twitter.